Staying organised as a busy mum these days is challenging, to put it mildly. But I've realised that over the years I have built up a whole series of micro habits and tiny tweaks that really help me in my day-to-day life as a busy, full-time working mum of four who also happens to have ADHD, which is maybe why I've found staying organised so challenging this whole time and I've had to come up with these systems. But in today's video, I'm going to share these tiny little tweaks that you can make, these tiny little systems that you can put into your life that are so simple, but honestly are going to make such a difference to the headspace that you will have clear in your mind. They've worked so well for me and I'm sure they'll work for you too. Now, if you've been here before, it is no secret that most of my organisation hinges around using my planner. Now, you could use any planner, but I couldn't find one that suited my needs, so I made my own, and I love to see how much you guys enjoy them too. In my planner, I do my planning for the week, I do my weekly reset, I do my meal planning, I decide what's important that's coming up that week, I use my Eisenhower matrix, I time block in half an hour blocks, and I've got a place to brain dump. So this is not a video about planners, there's a whole separate video. However, I feel like mentioning productivity without mentioning my planner would kind of be missing a huge piece of the puzzle. If you're not into paper planning, you can do digital planning, which I actually did for years and years, where I just used a digital planner on my iPad, and you can use the same versions of my planner, download them as PDFs and fill them out on tablets. Of course, you can do an organised life binder, which is just a series of printables or plain sheets of paper that you doodle on, and you just keep everything in it. Now, one of the things about my organised life binder, other than the printables, which you can get the starter pack inside my Patreon or inside of my store, or you can just, like I say, use pen and paper, but highly recommend this system. But one of the things that's really made a difference to me is having a section called To Process. And in this section, I've got a series of Polly Pockets where I put things like an in tray. So you know all those things that are like, oh, I need to pay that bill or find that NHS number for the children's flu forms. And it's a form and it's a bit of paper, and traditionally it would sit in a pile of doom somewhere or get lost. Well, now I put those in my To Process section of my Organised Life binder, and honestly that has been such a game changer. So what you can take away from this, if you don't have your Organised Life binder, I mean you can make your own, but if you don't want to use that system, just have one place, one folder, one place that is just stuff to process. Not stuff that needs to be filed, because honestly I'm trying to go electronic on as much paper as possible when it comes to things coming into the house. You know, there's always those bits of paper that are going to be sent to you, maybe a parking ticket that you need to pay, but put all those in one place, and my To Process section has absolutely changed the game for me. Well, yeah, I am a big advocate for planners. Ultimately, most of my long-term stuff, as in anything beyond the next 7 days, lives in a calendar inside of my phone, which synchronizes with my iPad, my computer, all the things. Now, we have Apple devices, so I just use the native Apple calendar, and I've got to say, I love it. I think they've leveled it up recently, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a second. But if you don't have Apple devices, or if you're already using Google calendars or whichever other calendars, then this can work for you too. So ultimately, I have several different calendars that I utilize, and some of them are shared and some of them are not, and I can turn calendars on and off on my phone depending on which ones I want to look at, because it depends what I'm doing at the time. So for example, I have a general family calendar which is shared with all family members, and in that I just put everything I need everyone to know about. So that would be swimming lessons, that would be holidays and trips, checking into hotels, just anything that's going on that all of my family needs to know about, and that all goes in there. Now, you could technically just stick with a paper calendar, maybe keep it in the kitchen centrally. For me, I feel like I've got to have the digital one as well, because some things are so far in advance and some things are recurring. So our dentist, for example, will be like, what are you doing next June? Let's book you in. I don't know what we're doing next June, but I put it in my phone and then it pops up and reminds me. Also for things like swimming, it happens every single week, and it's good to know that those things are kind of already put in the calendar. So when I come to do my weekly reset and I look at my digital calendar and I kind of copy that stuff into my paper planner. That might feel like an unnecessary step, and maybe it is for you, but for me, that helps to decode, right, what is coming up, what is already in the calendar and is fixed, and I've got to work around, as in times the children have got to be in school, and literally all of these things are in the calendar. I have times that the children start school and finish school in the calendar every day because I know that those times are already blocked off. I then know the space in between is space that I can utilize to fit other things in, like work. So I have a work calendar where I plot in work tasks, things have to happen obviously for work. A personal calendar for things that my family don't necessarily need to know about, but personal appointments for me. Just things like if I'm doing something during the day while my husband's in work, and it's just, I don't need to bother with them with it and clog up the family calendar. Obviously I have a content calendar because I need to know which videos are going out when, and all of this I can view from any of my devices. So if you've not yet set up family calendars, digital calendars, if you think it's a bit scary, I promise you it's not. It's well worth doing. It's so super easy, and it'll flip and change the game. On to some more phone related things that I use for staying on top of things. And I'm going to talk about iPhone specifically because that's what I have, but I'm pretty sure there's probably versions of the same thing in Androids, although I don't know because I don't know how to use those. So apologies if I'm talking iPhones. I'm sure these tips will apply whatever. Inside of the Notes app of my phone, every week I have a pinned note, which just means I make a note and then I select the little dots and I pin it to the top. And I call it Brain Dump Week Commencing, whatever the date is on Monday. And then I set out in there little sections for each day. And then every day, whenever anything just comes to mind, this could be something I've got to do, this could be an idea for a video, an idea for a birthday present, anything at all that I am worried it will float out of my scatty brain, because quite frankly, if I don't pin it down and get it written down somewhere, that's what will happen. My brain is like that bit in The Sound of Music, how do you catch a cloud and pin it down?
How do you catch a cloud and pin it down?
Those are my thoughts if I don't pin them down. And if I have this one brain dump note, then that is my digital place to dump things. In my planner, I've also got a section called, I think it's called Notes, but really it should be called Brain Dump or ADHD Side Quests, really. And it's just a place that every day while I'm working at my desk and I've got something that pops into my head, I jot it down there. So then at the end of the week, when I'm making my to-do list for the following week, or even at the end of the day when I'm kind of looking over the day, I know there are only 2 places I might have written things. Because before I had this system with my phone note of my weekly brain dump and that set place in my planner, I would make notes in all sorts of places, in all sorts of random notes on my phone, bits of paper, on post-its, and basically I would jot these things down, but then I would lose the actual note, and that would be about as helpful as not writing it down in the first place. So now at the end of the day, I can glance over and be like, okay, of these brain dump things that came to my head during the day, is there anything I have to action immediately? And definitely at the end of the week, when I'm looking to do my planning for the following week, when I'm doing my weekly reset, I can just go through that one note of all the things, and maybe I had a great idea for a video I could film the following week, and I could jot that into my to-do list for the following week. And since I've been doing this system, honestly, I feel like I've been so much more productive, because these great ideas I have don't just get lost and just float away. I can actually utilize them. And some of these ideas are things I need to remember to do. And seriously, just having that one place to put them, I'm telling you, it may sound tiny, but it's a flipping game changer. Now, the other thing that I use that's kind of similar, but not exactly the same, within my phone for productivity is the Reminders app. Now, I really love that the reminders on the iPhone now show up as long as you put a date with them, or a date and a time, inside of your calendar. This is really, really great, because not only can you see the reminders inside the Reminders app, but actually if you're looking at what's on today, you can also see, oh, I'm supposed to do that today, and it's so helpful. Now, I did mention that sometimes I write things that I need to do into my Notes app, and if I just really want to do something very quickly, I will put something I've thought that I've got to do inside of just that one brain dump note, largely because it's super easy to get to on my phone. It's not going to be fiddly, and then I can get back to what I'm supposed to be doing very, very quickly. But the Reminders app I use so frequently, every single day actually, and it's been a game changer since I've started using it properly. So by properly, I mean If you set reminders in there and then you just ignore them and they back up, it's a total waste of time. It's not going to be used at all. The reminders app has to be used if you're actually going to tick things off as you do them, which ultimately gives you a little bit of a dopamine hit, being like, woohoo, I did this. So I've got reminders for things in there that are set on recurring. I've got reminders to go off every day for things like exercising in the morning. Now I know I have to exercise in the morning, but ultimately if I don't make time for it, that reminder is still there, and then I'm like, oh, I need to make time for it. It kind of just jolts me into doing something that I should be doing, even if I haven't actually made time for it. So lots of the reminders aren't necessarily things that I'm going to forget totally, but more like a prompt to stick to the good habits that I'm supposed to be sticking to. Other things go off weekly, like making sure that we've got all the children's stuff ready for school, making sure I've done my weekend reset, making sure I've planned for the week, making sure I've updated the grocery order, making sure I've booked future grocery slots so I can actually have groceries delivered. We tend to go for the same slot every week purely to make life easier, and we'll talk about routine and ADHD in a little bit, because it's a different reason my children with autism benefit from routine, but it definitely benefits me. So I have these reminders going off. Some of them are daily, some of them are weekly, some of them are annually, to remind me to do things on certain dates. And I love that you can kind of set it and forget it, and you know it's going to pop back up and remind you to do the stuff you were supposed to do, as well as show up in your calendar. So yes, often I do write things I'm supposed to do in that weekly brain dump note, but ultimately if I'm not going to do those things pretty sharpish, then they do get transferred to my reminders and or my paper planner too. So as well as reminders in my phone, I actually use alarms, and I use them in a slightly different way. So reminders are more like, this is a prompt to do something and you need to tick it off when it's done. Alarms for me are more of, do you realize that this is the time? Because one of the things that I've always struggled with, and until I was diagnosed with ADHD last year at the age of 40, I didn't realize it was a specific ADHD struggle, and that is time blindness. Oh, I'm not sure if we're supposed to say time blindness, are we? I think that might be a term that's frowned upon from the blind community. So time obliviousness, does that cover it? Yeah, basically the totally losing track of time. With ADHD, people tend to fall into one of two patterns, either just not noticing the time at all and being horrendously late for things, which obviously if it's something like a school pickup or being on time for your job so you don't lose it, is just not good at all, because you've got children being left behind or bosses being not happy with you at all. Or you go the other way, and if you've got something to do at 2-3 o'clock, an appointment you've got to be at, it's like the whole rest of the day is ruined, because you've got to focus on it and be like, I can't get anything done, because if I try and do something else, I will get lost in that and then I will be late for the thing. So the way I work it is I have a ridiculous amount, an obscene amount actually, of alarms going off during the day. So like most people have, I have alarms to get up in the morning, but I also have an alarm then because I come down and do a morning routine before the children get up and are ready. I have an alarm when it's time to go back up and see to the children. I have an alarm when it's time to get the children downstairs to have breakfast. I have an alarm for the end of breakfast. I have an alarm for shoes on, ready for school. I have an alarm when it's 20 minutes before I need to leave to go and get the children from school, and then again 10 minutes before. And all of these help me for different reasons. So obviously, get up in the morning, self-explanatory. Going up to see to the children really helps because it means I can really focus on what I'm doing, whether it's work or exercise or whatever, without clock watching, because clock watching means you're not super focused on what you're doing. And then the ones for the children actually really help because it kind of helps me to stop having to nag them so much. It's like, well, it was the alarm's going off. And so it's like, come on kids, it's time for this. It's like, oh, that's the alarm telling you, not me. So that kind of helps. And then the one before going to fetch them from school, for example, just helps me go, okay, so 20 minutes to go, that means I need to kind of wrap up what I'm doing. And then 10 minutes to go means like computer off, go and get your shoes on and think about leaving. I also have alarms that go off weekly at certain times when it's time to go and leave for certain activities like swimming, things like that. And also when it's time to leave to fetch the children, if I've left them at an activity, to pick them up as well. As a sort of a bonus tip, hack, kind of thing. I find music, and we'll talk about that a bit more in a minute, but I find music and getting yourself in the right mood, the right mode, is an absolute game changer for your energy and how you feel, and then ultimately how productive you are. So what you can do is change the alarms or the tones for your reminders to things you find uplifting and exciting and empowering and, all those things. So I think it's really easy to change the alarms. You can just pick a song. You can pick a song from your library and that will be the song that goes off when you have an alarm. So rather than actual alarm noise, you're having one of your favorite songs. Every time you feel it, you're like, yeah, and you feel great. The other one is reminders. It's a little bit more tricky, but there's a way to do it where you pull a song into GarageBand and then from there you trim out the section that you want and then you create a tone, like a ringtone. Out of that, you export it as a tone and then you can use that sound as a ringtone or a reminder tone. And that is just another really nice way to feel kind of really like, yeah, when you get those reminders or alarms and really put you in the right frame of mind that you want to be in for whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing. Now, along the same lines as the reminders and alarms, but slightly different again, is how I use reminders for medication. So if you're using an iPhone, there's a section inside your health app specific for medications, and you can add medications that you take regularly or you take sometimes inside of that app. For example, I get migraines, so there's a tablet called MigraLieve I take sometimes, and at the stage where I have got a migraine, I'm feeling so foggy in the head that I can't remember when I last took the tablets. So I've added MigraLieve as a tablet that I take on a need to take basis. And then when I take the tablet, I log it inside of my phone as when I took the tablet, and that goes down as the time and the date and the dose. And that's really, really handy because then I can look back and be like, how long ago did I have a tablet? I can also look back and see how frequently I've had migraines by looking through that app. And then for regular medications, you can actually schedule those as when you want to be reminded to take them. So this could be something like ADHD medication, for example, you have to take it at the same time every day. Or you could set it for a course of medication. So when I've been on antibiotics and you've had to take things like 4 times a day, then you have these alarms going off these 4 times a day, and you set the medication app to tell you how long you have to take it for. So this is an absolute game changer because it's not only reminding you, but you're also ticking it off. Now you can also go the traditional route, and this is really handy, especially if you've got children. And if you have got antibiotics, then you can just put a sticker on the bottle, mark out the doses that you need to take, tick them off as you take them or as you give them to your child. And then everyone who is in charge of administering that medication to that child, or the parents or caregivers or whatever, know how many doses have been given. I also have printables that you can access if you join my email club or if you're inside of my Patreon, either the free or any of the paid versions. There's inside the Patreon, I think it's called Patreon bonuses, something like that, and there's a printable medication chart thing that's really, really handy if your children are ill, because you can write down in there what their temperature's been, how much medication they've had, all that sort of thing. And of course, you could just go down using the Notes app in your phone and write notes in there if that works for you. Or you could just use the actual Reminders app to set up medication reminders. But I love using the medication specific bit inside the iPhone because I feel it does give me that maximum, not only the reminding, but actually looking back and seeing what was taken when. And that's really handy, especially if you are speaking to doctors about your healthcare. One productivity hack that does seem to work for me is putting a deadline on things. And apparently, I'm learning so much since I was diagnosed, but apparently this is a bit of an ADHD thing too. And even if you don't have ADHD, this does kind of play into the Parkinson's law, which is the task expands as if to fit the time given. So if you put deadlines on for yourself, self-imposed deadlines from other people, you are more likely to stick to things. And if these deadlines are more imminent and things are more chunked down and you've got a certain amount of time to do a certain amount of work, you're far more likely to get it done. Well, I am at least. So this works for me in things like power hour speed cleans. I know I've only got an hour. It feels like a race. It feels kind of more energized, more kind of exciting. as exciting as cleaning can ever get anyway. And I feel like having that timer is a bit of a race against the clock, and I end up ultimately getting more done than if I told myself I had all day. Incidentally, I do find that if I'm trying to get stuff done around the house in kind of a cleaning, decluttering, tidying kind of way, if I wear trainers, and they've got to be indoor trainers because otherwise it defeats the object of cleaning, doesn't it? Otherwise you're just walking muck from outside all around the house that you're trying to clean. But if I wear indoor trainers, I feel way more energized. It's almost like they're my go shoes, and I ultimately end up getting more done. Back to Parkinson's law, the task expands as if to fit the time given. So therefore, if you give yourself these smaller chunks of time to get things done, so I've got to get this done by this time, you're more likely to get it done. I am, at least. So this is where the Pomodoro Technique comes in, where you do set blocks of work followed by set breaks. There are some really good apps that you can use to do this. I like the one where you can grow trees, and if you use your phone during the time where you should be working, you kill the tree. It gamifies the work that you're doing and really makes you stay on task, because even though the stake is, ultimately it's not that high, it's killing a fake tree, but for some reason that seems to work with my brain to keep me on track. So if you've not tried the Pomodoro Technique and you're trying to get stuff done, give it a go. Another one I picked up from the book Atomic Habits is habit stacking. So if you want to be doing something and being more productive, it's much easier to tack it on to something you already do. So for example, if you want to take better care of your skin, but you sort of always forget and don't end up putting any moisturizers or creams or anything on, if you put your creams next to your toothbrush, the chances of forgetting to clean your teeth, I'm hoping, are pretty slim. So therefore, if you add the skincare habit onto the tooth cleaning habit, then you're more likely to get it done. I've done this habit stacking in so many different areas of my life, and honestly it's been a really good way to get myself into the habit of doing things that I'm generally very forgetful with doing. If you've ever read the book Feel Good Productivity, then you'll know all about this next one. But ultimately, what I've realized is that I am far more productive when things feel fun and in flow, rather than when it feels like I'm just swimming upstream. For me, I'm much more productive if I'm in an environment I like, if my office is clean and tidy, which is why I try and make sure my office is reasonably tidy every evening before I go to bed, and I make sure that I give it a proper clean and wipe down the desk and everything on the weekend. So at least once a week it's given a proper clean, so that that environment is nice for me to be in. Daft things like the computer I work on, when it was time to get another one, I got a pink one. I love pink, and then every time I turn it on I'm like, oh, it's so pretty, and it makes me want to do more work. So very daft things like the colour of the things you choose, and you don't not have to get new computers to do this. You can just, like, if you've got a laptop, you can buy a pretty cover for it, a pretty case. You can make sure that you've got a nice desktop wallpaper, that your folders are nicely organised, and it's just pleasant to use. Things like having a drink nearby when you're working, having clothes you're comfortable in, and just generally making the stuff that you've got to do as pleasant as possible and finding the fun in it. So if I'm cleaning, you will always see that I've got at least an AirPod. I only use one at a time generally, because one will be charging, one will be in my ear, and then I can kind of listen out to the children with the other ear. But I've always got an earpod in. So if I'm cleaning or decluttering or packing, which are things that, let's face it, I would rather not be doing. I love a clean, decluttered house. I do not like cleaning or decluttering. I love going on trips. I do not like packing or unpacking. So I am always either listening to a podcast. I have a podcast, by the way, if you need a podcast to listen to. I've got a podcast. It's called Real Talk with Ree. You can check it out by going down in the description. But I'm listening to a podcast. I'm often listening to YouTube videos that I don't especially have to watch, because certain videos, you don't have to be that visual. Like, you could really listen to this video, couldn't you? And certainly on my podcast channel, you could listen to that, even though it's a video, without actually watching it. So I listen to YouTube videos, or I'm talking and catching up with my friends on the phone. And that means that while I'm doing something I don't really want to be doing, I'm also tacking that on, which I guess is habit stacking, with something I do want to be doing. And it makes it just a bit more fun, a bit more pleasant to want to do, and therefore I'm more likely to get it done. Ultimately, there are so many tiny little things that I do in my life that when they add up, just like the book Atomic Habits, I guess, all these tiny little things add up to make my life easier, and together they just make everything go a little bit smoother. From routines I have in different areas of my life and my home and with my children, to smart home automations that I use, All of these things add up just to make my life easier. So there's a playlist on screen of all of those videos that are going to be so helpful for you to watch if you just want to get that bit more organized. Plus how I use my planner to stay more organized. You can check out that video too, or hang out with me a bit more on my Patreon, and also grab some planning printables inside of there too. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.